Yeah, there's a lot of grossness. That's what's really sad, is that you would think that the military would be like the most pure of all institutions, because it has to be, because you're literally taking the strongest amongst us and having them go and fight for our country and fight for our interests. And you would think that there's no room for bullshit. Yeah. But apparently there's a lot of room for bullshit.
Well, there's a lot of room for advancement, I guess. If you simply don't pop positive on a piss test, don't get too many DUIs, and don't get arrested for, let's say, domestic violence or something like that, you can stay in the military for a long time. So you don't need to excel when you hit a certain rank. And I think that that's what we see it play out in Afghanistan, August of 2021. That's 20 years of being able to plan for that withdrawal. And that's the best that our military leaders could do. 20 years to prepare for that. So somebody can look at that who never had any touch point with the military and apply common sense and logic to that problem set and have a much better plan to extract forces from Afghanistan.
That whole thing seemed insane.
It's ridiculous.
It seemed insane, and it's, for whatever reason, it's not being discussed when people are talking about this presidential race.
Yep.
That was one of the more insane things of our time. And then when you talk to people that were there, like Tim Kennedy, he's told me some horror stories about what was going on there.
All those babies thrown over the fence and the barbed wire.
He was saying he saw worse things during that time than all of his tours.
Jeez.
They were, like, Taliban just killed a woman in front of them, just openly, like, put her head on a truck and shot her in the head in front of everybody.
And it was unnecessary. That's the whole thing. It was unnecessary. If you
I just don't understand how you can do that. I don't know. I don't understand. Like, I mean, if you're going to execute something that's as complex as removing all the troops from a place that we've occupied for 20 years. Yeah. Like, it seems like that would involve a very thoroughly reviewed plan.
One would
by
think.
Many experts, and come up with what's going to cause the least likelihood of casualties. And
no, I thought about it in the early days. So in 2003 in Afghanistan, I thought I was catching the tail end of it then, because the flashpoints before that, we had Mogadishu, we had Panama, Grenada, Desert One. So after Vietnam, you had these flashpoints. And this was, now we're moving into extended combat operations. But from the end of Vietnam up to then, our model is a flashpoint, essentially. So we all thought if we weren't there, essentially, right after 9/11, that we were going to miss it. And then we have essentially 20 years. But I remember being in the back of a Hilux pickup truck with a Afghan guy, and I'd always ask him if they were, back then I could ask him if they were Muj, if they fought the Soviets, because I was always interested in that history and their backstories and what that life was like in the late 70s through the 80s into the 90s. And so I was always essentially collecting information just because I was curious. But as I'm talking to this guy, I distinctly remember thinking, man, one day we're going to leave this place, and this guy is helping us right now. What's going to happen to his family when we leave this place? And we saw that all play out. It was 20 years later, but
we didn't.
That play out.
There was no reporting on it. Like,
no, it just disappeared.
Yeah, we hear about it from soldiers. We hear about it from people that are, like, deeply embedded journalists that were there. But most people that know about that story don't know about all the people that worked with the United States over there that are fucked. And we don't even know what happened to them.
Yep. No, it's awful. We have a history doing that, though. I mean, we did it in Vietnam, did it with the Kurds after the first Gulf War, so we don't have a very good track record as far as taking care of those and their families who help us over there. And they get left behind, typically, and then family slaughtered.
It's just hard to imagine that that's how we approach things.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to think that the people that are in charge are that incompetent. Or that are that callous, or that are that they just look at a numbers thing instead of looking at bodies and human lives.
Yeah. Well, all that stuff, I get to write about these guys meeting their ends in horrible ways in the pages of the novels. So I guess that's my way to do my part to kind of keep that history alive, because you can go back to fiction. Let's say you can go back, Ian Fleming, we talked about him earlier. You can go back and read those books from the 50s, and that really is a portal back to post-World War II Great Britain and their changing place in the world. I mean, empire decline, and that's Ian Fleming's way to keep that old empire alive, is through James Bond and his creation. So it's they're time capsules back to the time in which they were written. You go books in the 70s, books in the 80s, go back, reading the Tom Clancy, read whether it's Hunt for Red October, Patriot Games, whatever it is, it's a snapshot of what's going on there geopolitically, and then also things like searching for a phone booth and looking for a quarter